Timothy Kirkhope, Conservative MEP for Yorkshire and the Humber. Drax have been waiting, they tell me, 3 years for the EU to come out with its plans on biomass standards. What do you make of the wait?
Well, I think it's unacceptable, particularly to people like Drax, who are one of the biggest power stations in Europe, a power station that has seized the opportunities of moving to renewables, moving to a generation of power through biomass, doing everything you could say that fits exactly with the sort of demands, environmental demands made both by the EU Commission but also by national government as well, and they're major employers in my region. So as far as I'm concerned, what's the delay about? Let's get on with this.
What is it that they need to know? Why do they need to get some facts about biomass from the European Union?
Because they're obliged to have a biomass product which is from sustainable sources. And the issue here is that the Commission is simply not laying down the proper criteria, proper parameters for this biomass material. So it makes it very difficult for them to invest and to be confident for the future if in fact some regulations might come in which actually they would not comply with. I mean, they want to comply with the most strict sustainability regulations, but they're not there to comply with. So consequently, the massive investment which is involved here for the next few years cannot be embarked on as much as they would like until they've got those provisions in place. So it's not good enough, it really is not, that the Commission is delaying things in this way.
And what does that communication, if I can put it like that, from the European Commission need to include? What would be a good result for Drax to be written into to these European standards?
Well, Drax already are getting their biomass from what they regard as very sustainable sources. They're being very careful about this, actually. They really are, because they know that that is going to be the future. And as we're now looking at a Commission demand for 2020 of 37% of renewables coming from this particular source in Europe. Well, the demand is there on the one hand, but the conditions and criteria are not in place on the other. That's an unreasonable situation for a major employer and a major investor like Drax. So they've got to have some kind of certainty as soon as possible, and they're here in Europe talking to people like myself, the legislators, but also talking to the Commission to try and get a move on. Now, from my point of view, I like what Drax do. They're very important industrial components in my region, and I want them to be successful in the future, but to have certainty about the investment program that they're about to embark on.
Drax was talking about this being really a matter of urgency. Isn't that surely because they need to cut their carbon emissions, because those targets are also coming in the coming years?
Yes, well, they're coming in over the next 5 years. So yes, it's true. And because they are, if you like, they're the biggest coal-fired operation. They've done an awful lot, of course, to cut emissions as far as they can with that particular source of fuel. But now they want to move into biomass, which is going to be the future for these sort of power plants. Okay, on the one hand, cut your carbon, but on the other hand, we're not telling you what our provisions or regulations will be in relation to biomass. That is not an acceptable situation for a major investor and a major employer.
I understand there's also some difference of opinion about biomass itself. Some green groups don't support it. Are you convinced that biomass is sustainable, is a viable method to use?
No, the only reason I believe the green groups are not happy about some elements of this is because they say that the sustainability criteria are not in place, and therefore some sources of biomass can come from, if you like, from areas where in fact there is causing environmental damage and so on. Now the whole point about this is to avoid that, and I think Drax are claiming they already do so. They're very careful about it, but they just need to have those provisions in place so they can invest. Now that seems reasonable. I think everybody should be happy with that, and so I can't see why the Commission are dragging their heels anymore on this.
If the Commission, just finally, if the Commission do continue to drag their heels, as you put it, delays continue, what could the impact of that be on Drax, on the industry in Yorkshire?
Yeah, well, it could, if you like, slow things down at least, but it might also stop them from investing. I mean, that's not good for anyone. And of course, we have a power generation crisis in our country coming along unless we actually find these alternatives. And this is a very, very important initiative. They've spent a lot of money on research. They've spent a lot of money on making sure that this will work technically and also, of course, will meet those carbon reduction targets. So, you know, I will be pressing very hard that the Commission gets a move on, gets these things in place and allows my employers to get on and do good things for the region.